Hot mic, cold alibi. Radio stations don't sleep. They hum. After midnight, when the last daytime producer texts 3 unsolicited notes and finally surrenders, when the vending machine swallows its own grievances and the hall lights dim to the color of excuses, the station changes languages. Day is soft launches and sponsorship reads and a battle over whose celebrity call-in gets top of hour. Night is a wire's breath. It's the red on air, bulb warming the glass from the inside, the quiet click of a relay, the board's faders resting like sleeping dogs under the heel of your palm. If you've never stood in a soundproof room at 2:07 a.m. and felt the building listen to your heartbeat through the floor, you don't know how a place can ask you to tell the truth without moving its mouth. I'm Alex. Nights at Signal House belong to me, host, engineer, janitor of other people's mistakes. My office is Studio B when the ad server behaves and the ops desk when it doesn't. On the shelf behind me, a jar of spare windscreens that always smell faintly of sugar and dust, a coffee mug that has survived hostile dishwashers and one divorce, reels I keep out of nostalgia because move fast and break things is a terrible policy for audio. I know the temper of every channel on the board. I can tell you which preamp sulks if you look at it, and which mic forgives a lie if you whisper it in the right octave. Eliza, my wife then, could make a musician feel inevitable. Publicist, brand architect, crisis weather vane, she could turn a missed flight into a press moment and did twice the week we met. We were both on the floor of a showcase bar where the stage smelled like spilled Pilsner and ambition. She liked the way I didn't rush a story to keep up with the beat. I liked the way she ordered water and still made the bartender feel like he'd been tipped. We kept Wednesdays because vows are easier to keep when a calendar helps. She'd come through the side door where the freight elevator pretends it isn't haunted, and she'd tap the glass with 2 knuckles. There is a notch in my back from the corner of the rack mount. You can read our marriage in that bruise. If this sounds like bragging, I'm just building the room. Eliza wore a scent that waited until you were already in trouble. She said, "We have 10," and counted me down with her breath. I learned to take 9 and salt away 1 under my tongue like a pirate. In my world, silence is expensive. You don't waste it. The first odd thing looked like a kindness I hadn't earned. The pop filter on mic 2 wore a lipstick kiss the color of bruised plums. Someone had pulled it off and put it back wrong. The seam was a quarter-inch shy of where I leave it. The fader for aux 3 sat at -10 with a tiny black hair caught under it. The board is a tattletale if you're patient. There was a ring from a glass, no handle, a tumbler on the corner of the console where even interns know not to put one. The log showed a studio door override at 11:58 p.m. Held open sixes 2 weeks in a row. The security camera above the stairwell blinked out for 18 seconds at 12:01 as if a moth had discovered religion. My mind wrote a benevolent story, a guest engineer, a late-night podcast tapping she forgot to mention. The city is full of people who think they're the kind of person an after-hours studio happens to. But on the third Wednesday, the pop filter wore the same color, and there was a clear silicone dot under the desk, a rain bead, an earbud tip, and the story I was writing chewed through its leash. Eliza approached open first. Laundry night, her hair up the way fast decisions do it, her throat clear, voice pitched to stage whisper a few inches closer to apology than seduction. "With rules," she said, "with care and guarantees, with us first always." She didn't touch me while she said it, which in our vocabulary meant she was telling the truth. "No one from the station," I said, and she nodded. "Tell me before," I said, and she nodded again, the way an architect nods to a load-bearing wall. The first week after the treaty, she kissed me like a ceasefire. The second, she kissed me like she owed me change. The third, at 11:14 p.m., she texted, Client dinner ran long, don't wait up, and the studio door held itself open for 7 seconds at midnight. I don't set traps, not on the first offense. You do radio long enough, you learn the difference between drama and signal, but secrets like to hear their footsteps. So I rolled a fresh session in Pro Tools and armed an input no one thinks about. The room mic under the counter that exists only so I can hear a guest breathe. I dusted the inside of the Studio B door handle with a whisper of UV powder from the same kit we used to check counterfeits in cash giveaways. I ran a thin loop of unassertive fishing line at shin level across the short hall to the green room, not to catch a person, just to teach a stride to confess it was in a hurry. I tightened the closer on Studio B until it forgave patience and punished ambition. At 12:04, the software timestamp rolled over and my silent track lit up. Room tone has character. I know what these walls sound like when they are alone. There was the click of a ring on glass, a giggle pitched for privacy, the rustle of clothing that knows the difference between fast and hurried. The door closed sighed like a person who thought they could get away with almost. Under the blacklight, my UV dust bloomed faint galaxies on the inside plate of the B handle, and later, because secrets always involve wrists, a pale spray on skin just above the thumb joint where Pulse thinks it can hide. Eliza came by Studio B at 12:20, hair pinned with the speed of fast hands, the controlled smile of someone who has rehearsed until the packing lives in their bones. She looked at my hand, at the blacklight wand, then at her own wrist. The small, impossible constellation hummed back at us in a frequency nobody but me could hear. "Please don't," she said. "Not don't be cruel or don't misinterpret. Just don't." Tiredness wore her bones like a borrowed coat. "I asked you to tell me before," I said. "I thought I did," she said. And the worst part is, in her grammar, she had. Client dinner ran long was a confession she respected enough to deliver on time. He followed her in with his jacket over his shoulder as if doors were old friends and alarms were optional. Archer Kane, one of hers. Sad boy genius in public, laughing menace in private, a jawline whose publicist had a lawyer. He wore a sweater like an apology, and eyes that slid off my face the way men look at someone who is about to not exist in their story. He had that musician's slouch, perpetual reach for air. "We're going," he said, a stage whisper for a stage I paid the light bill for. "We're not performing in my studio," I said, and the board, patient and helpful, lit its small, useful lights to keep us from pretending nobody had said anything. We didn't do a scene. I did not roll the tape. I did not open a mic and break a man in 50 markets. I found the back exit key and held the door and let them walk into a night that smelled like dust and new rain. In the glass of the fire door, I watched the two of them vanish down the alley like plot points who had nearly learned to be people. Our marriage ended without headliners. Lawyers spoke in an airless room that smelled like printer toner and good intentions. We split the furniture with the competence of people who carry heavy things for a living. She took the bar cart, and the champagne flutes, and the blazer I would always admire on a different kind of night. I kept the chipped mug, and the way my hands remember her collarbone when I'm making coffee, and the knowledge that rules, like gates, are only as strong as the people holding them. The station breathed. Pledge Drive arrived like a storm that knows your roof. Volunteers with muffins and mantras filled the phone bank. The ad server pretended not to understand MP3 metadata again. A teenage intern mispronounced the name of a country and turned the phones into a chorus of very certain people. I did my show. I cued the bumper at 58 without looking because I'm old and the clock is muscle memory. The room forgave me for being human. June came with the midnight coffees, and that is not a metaphor. podcast producer by title, emergency editor by practice. She wears ink on her fingers and ringlets falling out of a clip. By 2 a.m. her voice is the kind of warm that makes a night driver 3 states away think he's got company. She keeps ginger in her bag and grapefruit lip balm in her pocket, and we both pretend the station hasn't begun to smell like her in the useful way that lingers. She didn't flirt. She made competent choices in my presence and made eye contact when they went well. If you've ever fallen for a voice before a body, you're a radio person even if you don't admit it. She'd step into B with a cup balanced in each hand and her hip nudging the door, and I'd see the ink smudge on her wrist from a note she'd written herself at 9 p.m. and kept all the way through. "You eating?" she'd say, which, in our taxonomy, is "Are you sleeping?" and "Should I be worried?" And "You're not allowed to shrink." Between segments, we'd sit shoulder to shoulder in the red half-light, watching the waveform crawl across the screen like a perfunctory sunrise. She would listen the way some people breathe, no labor, no performance. On nights when the phones caught a story between songs and held it hostage, she'd press her palm to my ribs where the laugh lives and ask, "You want to roll with it?" And I'd nod, and we'd both lean a millimeter, and a call-in about a truck stop in Nebraska became a midnight civic. I told her about the treaty I failed at and the glitter of UV on a wrist, and the way a pop filter can tell a law you tried to write for a room. I didn't dramatize. Radio punishes melodrama. She touched the notch at my jaw with a fingertip stained by coffee and said, simply, "You can keep your place sacred and still have a body," like she was switching to the brake mic and needed it clean. The first time we kissed, the board was live to a long, moody instrumental that had 7 safe minutes in it, and we used 3. We were standing in the doorway because doorways are honest. Her mouth tasted of ginger and night and a sweetness that wasn't a food group. She kept her eyes open for a beat longer than most, not to check for witnesses. There aren't any when you are noise for a living, but to witness me. I put my hand against the side of her neck where pulse negotiates, and felt the tiny stutter that can only be called yes. We aren't kids. Speed impresses the frightened. We made the rules that keep a sanctuary a sanctuary. No kisses with a mic armed. No bodies against a board. The station has carried enough confessions. Yes to the news booth after hours with the light at its friendliest dim. Yes to the green room couch with a blanket that it should not have but does when the alarm is on and the cameras are bored. Yes to the tiny roof outside Studio C at 3 a.m., where satellites pretend to be stars, and the city forgets its obligations. Eliza showed up once during Pledge Drive because the world loves symmetry. She came in on someone else's arm, a DJ whose brand burned hotter than it lasted. She looked fine. She looked like a decision that had paid off. We did the nod you do when shame is unnecessary. Archer Kane sent a promo to the station 6 months after. I put it in the maybe later bin, and later occurred a year after when his song had found its way into the mouths of people who hadn't heard my name. We didn't make a big thing of moving forward. That's the secret nobody sells. It's mostly small rightnesses done often. June learned where I keep spare cables by looking instead of asking. I learned the look she gives a waveform when it's not wrong but it's not yet right. I learned the smell her hair collects from the wind when she goes to the roof to reset her weather. She learned my tell for getting angry, the way I take a breath like I just realized there's no script, and she'd set her hand on my back, not in comfort but in calibration. Late one night, between essays and a live session from a kid whose guitar had a sticker that made me want to send him vitamins, I found the silicone earbud tip, the first one from the bad day, still in the shallow tray where XLR adapters go to die. I set it beside its twin because history likes symmetry, and because I'm a man who likes neat drawers. I did not frame them or paste them to a blog or make them into art. I put them in a spare Altoids tin with 2 guitar picks and a rubber band, and the printed list of phone system resets. And I close the lid like a period. On our nights, June and I avoid making the station complicit. But there are moments the building offers you because it knows you won't embarrass it. The red bulb glows, the board is purring in its contented way, and a song that doesn't require your attention holds the air like a frozen pond. June leans in my doorway with a look that says I could still stay professional, and a mouth that says I won't be offended if you don't. She lifts a finger, stay, then tilts her head toward the green room and a couch that exists as a rumor. We go because we are good at the difference between rumor and myth. It is not athletic. It is not tragic. It is a slow, amused negotiation between two people who decided to take good care of a room and, if they're careful, each other. Her hips learn my forearm like we've been rehearsing. My mouth writes its name under her ear, and she makes a sound that radio can't broadcast not because it's dirty, but because it's too particular to share. When an HVAC unit kicks on, we both laugh into the other's skin because you can fall in love with the person who laughs at the same ugly noise with you. We count 10 minutes and use 9, not because we believe in scarcity, but because the last one is a tip you leave on the table for the night. I throw to a promo that's corny and mine, and the board hums like a pet that likes being petted. We go back to work with a smell in our hair that is more story than perfume. If you tune in after midnight on a Thursday, you'll hear me smoother than I used to be. You'll hear a woman's laugh off mic that I do not try to hide. You'll hear a live take I shouldn't have believed in until I did. And if you stood in the hallway outside Studio B, you'd see two people who keep their hands to themselves on purpose and then, sometimes, forget on purpose too. You'd see a red bulb announce that someone is making a choice in there and doing it on time. Radio stations don't sleep. They hum. They do not forgive easily, but they do forgive. The board doesn't care who you kiss. It cares if you blew a preamp. The door doesn't care who you let in. It cares if you hold it open long enough to be conspicuous. I lock up at 4:00 a.m. and run my thumb over the nick in the Studio B handle where every story I have rubs its shoulder. I switch off the red light and let the room go from witness to rest. June hooks a finger in my belt loop and steals my last clean minute because she can. I let her because I should. We leave by the side door, and the stairwell buzzes the way bad fluorescent does when it's trying to pretend it's neon. Outside, the city breathes the way it does when everybody else thinks it's sleeping. I put one hand in my pocket and touch the Altoids tin like it's a relic and a joke. Dead air is the enemy at work. In love, it's the truth arriving right on time.